Oh, I am Michael Lighten, writer of science fiction and poetic works. I'm reading a chapter of one of my works so that you can hear how the writing flows and see if you have interest. My works are all futuristic so far, except for some poetry, a two-volume set called Care Teachings for a New World. This reading will consist of Rough Men Battle. So I'm going to start with the author notes. Rough Men Battles is a saga, an alternate reality that Earth could go through if circumstances were different. If we made several decisions when it came to government or life, then we could find ourselves in this alternate world. Although this is not realism but fiction, all fiction is fantasy added to a hint of reality. Who's to say this could not happen? It will take some years to develop all these stories, and I find great enjoyment in writing these pages for you. I encourage all readers of this work to share it with others and watch the times, and if you see great similarities in the events. Look on a small island called Radio Tower for a child with the name of Maurice and tell him I said hi. Of course, these are fictional accounts of futuristic events. Each timeline is distinct by their standings. Much later in the stories, a New Times Council was developed to remove all the dates situated in the future. I believe this transpired so I did not become obsessed with the dates. And doing research on several characters almost got lost on futuristic fictional histories. It all became a jumbled mess. The council, even though fictional at this time, helped me to absolve myself from many complexities and times of birth. I would encourage a gleaming of the back glossary for otherworldly alien, OWA, expressions and brief history to clarify any confusing terms. Also, I would note there are present places in the future written in war experiences. I did not or wherever desire these locations to meet any disastrous fate. I only wrote what I saw the characters experience, and the occurrences thereafter continued in its story. Volume 1 Introduction. As cataclysmic events struck humans in the form of earthquakes, volcanoes, and massive storms, a new world began to form. Hidden otherworldly aliens or OAs began to gain power and land. Humans, on the verge of annihilation, began to push back, and a world war began that lasted for generations. These are the stories of the fights, conflicts, and wars and their conclusion. Go with me as we read of our possible demise or our new beginning. This was written in August of 2011. Prologue 1. When Roughman Tide unleashed a megaton over Milwaukee to combat the Unleashed Force machine, this caused a destructive chain of events that traveled far and wide and would touch many generations for years to come. Many communities fell into disarray as the megaton and force device began to affect electronics and brain waves, which caused rolling blackouts and insanity in unstable individuals. The ancients, who orbited planet Earth in a mothership, was forced to leave Earth's orbit due to the unstable electrons and vowed to return. Enemies of the rough lands seized the moment and attacked on various fronts of the Fuman lands. The end of the Fuman reign appeared near. Bible quote, Isaiah 2:4. He shall judge between the nations and rebuke many people. They shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. Chapter 1. A council was formed called New Times, Old Times, to debate the use of numerical years and a way to forget the exact date of cataclysmic events that devastated the planet. With a slight change to the name, the council was named New Times Council or New Times. When the ancients left the orbit of planet Earth, 9 of the rough men fell into a coma and did not recover. Their bodies gradually began to lose weight, and though they were intravenously fed, they died. But no diagnosis could be given for their state. Earth scientists and phasey doctors attributed it to the human's connection to the mothership, and when it left orbit, their bodies immediately went into a decay like existence. All who understood the ancients' prophetic words that not all the rough men would survive these arduous times. In the new times, the rough land's infrastructure began to crumble. It was a gradual decline, and the Phases used this weak moment in human history to begin attacks on the rough lands not aligned to the Phasey cause. There were Phasey groups who were angered that the ancients did not pick them as a new race to guide humanity into the light. This anger was placed against the humans. The weather patterns began to decline in stability. Hurricanes and tornadoes were frequent. These storms began to sap at the human communities hard, so that 4 rough men abandoned their responsibilities. They left the community and became hermits. This act also opened the door for Phases to raid these leaderless areas. The humans were jailed, and Phases who supported the community were branded as traitors and forced to leave the area. Without community protection, these Phases usually died from harsh weather conditions or roaming human bandits who killed for pleasure. The humans were left in the community because the raider Phases saw the humans as pawns in a game that was not theirs. These raider Phases saw the humans as needing guidance from them. Rage against the rough man communities increased with vicious fighting on both sides. These raider Phases underestimated the might of unified forces of different species. All the human colonies were mixed with human, Phasey, and Belarus soldiers. This alliance met the raider Phases head on and obliterated many of their soldiers in open battle. The raider Phases, outnumbered, increased their assassination attempts against the rough men to undermine the spirit of the region. This had nominal success. Guerrilla tactics succeeded in killing 11 more rough men. 3 more rough men fell into a coma like state through extreme pressures. The world suddenly shook in fear and trembled when they saw a world without rough lands. Many world leaders from various species, including Phasey, knew there was a possibility the world could plunge into darkness without the rough men to keep it stable. There were no plans forthcoming on how to battle a foe that was invisible, cunning, and determined to win. There were only 9 rough men left in the world, and there were stories to corroborate there were less than that. 8 rough men survived after one of them fell into a coma like stance or state. Maurice was alarmed by all the deaths and coma like states of the rough men. He tried for a plea of encouragement through the airwaves that lasted only 10 minutes. When the unstable electrons interfered with his transmission, he turned to General with a look of deep concern. Marcus, master at information gathering, became depressed by all the information in the world relating to rough men. He knew that gloomy information could have a negative effect on his soul. He gathered for 6 hours, rested the other 6, and gathered the other 6 hours. He felt what he did became less of a chore. His move in with Tristan and her son Lawrence was another step he had lived to regret. Law became belligerent and rebellious over the move, so that he fussed with his mom all the time over trivial matters. This bickering sent them both about the house with arms that flailed amid shouts of anger. When Tristan became angered enough, she pelted Law with food cans and swung broomsticks at him. He always left the house for a couple of days and stayed with Maurice at the tower until cooler heads prevailed. Then he returned. Apologies were accepted from both sides until the next wave of arguments commenced. Marcus knew the fights were not about the trivial matters themselves, but about a deeper matter concerning Maurice. Law wanted Maurice as his guardian dead instead of Marcus. Maurice had no interest in Tristan in that fashion, but Law remained with his own dreams and desires to be near Maurice, with or without his mom. Law's chance came one night when Marcus had returned from the tower. It was a cool night with a slight breeze. Many of the citizens wore jackets or sweaters to block out the breezy air. Marcus climbed from the air car in his dark blue robe and black boots and saw Law as he stood on the house porch. Marcus sighed within as he walked closer and expected to see tears in the young man's eyes. He expected to see them in the moon's light, which shined fully on this night. He was startled when he noticed a tall robot on the ground. It appeared trying to stand, but Lawrence motioned for it to lie still. "What happened to your robot?" Marcus asked. "The bad electronics. I noticed it was walking funny and knew it was a matter of time before it went down," Lawrence said. "No way to fix it?" Marcus asked. Law only shook his head negatively. Marcus noticed Law was quieter than usual and wondered what he was thinking of. "Your mom kicked you out again?" Marcus asked. "No, she's cool for now. Just standing on the porch watching the moon." Law sighed deeply. As Marcus walked closer, he did expect to see the usual peers, and since he did not, he was overjoyed. He never wanted to see the young kid in distress. Marcus patted Law on the shoulder. "Things will be all right," Marcus encouraged. "I've been thinking about things lately. I am 24 and still living with my mom. How old were you when you moved from home?" Law asked. "Those were different times, Law. My mother and father divorced. which left my mom holding the bag when it came to income. I eventually had to drop out of school to support the home. Plus, my mom worked. I was 16 then, right before the Bofu Wars. I had the support of my mom to leave that area and find work elsewhere and send her money when I could. It was a different situation than yours, Marcus said. When is a good time to leave for good? Law pressed him. When you feel it is right. In here, Marcus pointed to Law's chest. I thought you would say that, Law said lightly. Marcus cursed lightly as Law pulled out a duffel bag of clothes and lifted it to his shoulders. Law patted Marcus on the shoulder. I set you up, Marcus. I like you, but I need a way out. So my mom doesn't hate me completely. I thought we would share the hate. Now she can hate you and me at the same time, Law said. Marcus cursed under his breath. Going to move in with Maurice. I already worked it out with him. Mom will be the last to know. I'm telling her now. I suggest you leave to give her some time to cool off, Law said lightly. Marcus screamed in many curse words. Law quickly went into the house as Marcus hurried to his air car, but he didn't climb in fully when he heard an earth shattering scream. Law quickly walked from the house with Tristan on his heels, with shouts and screams. Don't leave, Tristan screamed. Who will take care of me? That's what Marcus is for, Law said as he climbed into his green air car. Marcus? Tristan turned to Marcus, who stood near his air car. You idiot! You turned my son against me? How could you? It was his choice, Marcus said in defense. Lawrence felt free as his air car rose into the moonlit night sky. He smiled and waved at his mom and Marcus as he flew toward the great tower miles away. Justine lived with Dandy for 8 years and enjoyed their time together as sisters immensely, but Justine had reservations. Dandy could not fill the void that was inside her sister, even though she tried with parties and nights out with other girl phases their age. Justine's birthday was November the 30th, and she would be 26. But what comes after? Thought Justine. She wondered about a house party that would last for days, and then she declined that thought for another time. Dandy was 17 and grew to 5 feet and 4 inches. She was shorter than her sister, who was 6 feet 1 inch tall. Dandy knew her limitation when it came to height, but her other limitation was her hair. She had a few spots of hair, which she combed gracefully and daily. Leon Ben was 65 by November. He accumulated some gray hairs and wrinkles around the eyes. He tried to enjoy his life, but inside him rested a dark side. It was the spirit of loss, hopelessness, and suicide. It weighed in him, and when times became harsh and lonely, he climbed to his dresser, he limped to his dresser, and pulled out a bottom drawer. Underneath, a mess of clothes, was the gun. He almost touched it at times, but he held back and forced himself to live another day. Shawnee was now 18 since May. She acted as general secretary and was glad to be his guardian daughter. She enjoyed her position. She kept papers in order and his appointments marked down. She spent a lot of time trying to keep him safe in his back room of studies. If he needed to go on an errand, she went with him and carried a laser gun as protection. She was afraid for his life. He was the last of a dying breed. There were only 8 left in the world, he thought indignantly. With all the stress that surrounded the region and possible assassination attempts on humans who represent the rough lands, Shawnee was near mental meltdown when Christopher Ream summoned her on a drastic secret known about the rough men. She should come at once. Shawnee left in a hurry and failed to take her laser gun. Much later, she found she should have taken it for protection. Dave was 38 in April. She began to feel old. It was not a physical feeling, more psychological. She knew both females had a quick time clock when it came to having babies. Studies had it ending after 35. Age 35, the both females found it almost impossible to become impregnated. And if impregnated, a miscarriage ensued after 3 months. Dee knew her, and Maurice had not completed their sexual rendezvous some years ago. She wanted it completed so it could give rise to their fubo being born. She blinked at the name. What a bizarre name, she thought. Garvey was 17 and Paige was 16. Even though they were a year apart, Garvey was more vocal than his brother. Paige was more assertive than his brother. Each brother reflected off the other. This reflection played well with others, except Maurice. Easily upset through outward and inward pressures, Maurice constantly berated his sons and reminded them of their chores about the tower. They painted walls, buffed floors, and took out trash in large clear bags all day. Garvey was tired of all the chores, and he displayed his displeasure by grunting or taking too long to complete his tasks. Maurice did not make it a habit of striking his foods, but after things changed, and Garvey was soon struck upside his head and neck several times with an open palm. These hits stung Garvey on his body and inside his soul. He was much taller than Maurice, but he knew he was no match for his father, who soon learned to stay away from his father when he was perturbed. As the last end of November came and went, the weather patterns over Hannibal became increasingly erratic. It was so erratic to drive whole families underground in shelters. Maurice knew this was a time for unity among the rough man communities. He pled for surviving rough men to come to Hannibal and set up house. He said there was plenty of land. General controlled the board on this day, and the signal could only be held for 17 minutes. It's getting worse, General said. I know. We need to do something to counter that, Maurice said, with a face filled with concern. Do you really think these rough men will pick our community over theirs? The trek from certain points must be over thousands of miles. What about hostiles? How would they counter that and survive the harsh weather conditions? General asked, alarmed. Spread out like this, we are vulnerable, Maurice said somberly. This plan of yours is flawed, Maurice. I propose that you rethink it. Each community must deal with each threat separately. The ancients reiterated that each rough man must stay in his own community to lessen any competitive spirit from either rough man. There is enough land out there for all the rough men, but this unity will abolish that, General said. So we just take it on the chin? Maurice asked. The best fighters know how to take a blow as well as give one, General said with finality. Maurice finally came to the realization they were all alone in this fight, and all they had was each other. That was chapter one of Rough Men Battles. I trust you enjoyed that. In the works, there are two more I found in a pocket. One is a science fiction thriller called The Forgotten Case of Rain, and the other is a practical guide to living called Communications Love. If you like any of my books, they are at Amazon.com, at GooglePlaybooks.com, and DraftedDigital.com, which is connected to Barnes and Noble and Apple Books and various other books under Drafted Digital for the ebook. On the Google Play Books, that's where there's an audio book, and that's auto-narrated. So even though it's read by AI, it's 10 times better than my voice. I'm not putting myself down. I went into the book and I developed it so that it was connected to each character. So if you listen to that, you can find out that's much more smoother. This is Michael Lighten, and I will connect with you in the next audio.